Hello everyone. Before we dive into tonight's accounts, I have a small request. If you find yourself looking over your shoulder or feeling that chill down your spine while listening, please hit the like button and subscribe. It's the best way to support the channel and ensures that these stories keep coming your way. I also want to hear from you. Drop a comment letting me know where in the world you're watching from and exactly what time it is for you. This was a few summers back. Me and two guys I've been hiking with since college. We try to do at least one serious trip a year, something remote, something that takes actual planning. Decided to do a 4-day stretch through a section of the George Washington National Forest in Virginia. Not the popular sections. We deliberately picked a corridor that sees almost no foot traffic. The kind of area where you go a full day without seeing another boot print on the trail and start to feel like you might be the only people who've been through in weeks. That was the appeal. No crowds, no noise, just 4 days of deep Virginia woodland and whatever the forest decided to offer. The first 2 days were perfect. Good weather, good miles, the kind of hiking where everything clicks and you remember why you do this in the first place. We were well into the backcountry by the afternoon of day 2, legitimately remote. The kind of remote where the nearest road is a long day's walk in any direction, and the idea of running into another person feels genuinely unlikely. That's when we found it on the trail. I almost walked past it. It was sitting dead center on the path, placed right in the middle where nobody could miss it. A bundle of sticks tied together and arranged into a figure. Arms out, legs suggested, the whole thing bound with what looked like thin strips of bark, maybe a foot tall. It had the look of something that took time, not a random pile of sticks that fell into a shape. Something constructed deliberately, carefully, by a pair of hands that knew what they were making. My buddy Marcus stopped and looked at it for a second and said something like, "That's not creepy at all," and laughed. My other friend Teo took a photo, and me, being me, I thought it was genuinely interesting. Found art, trail art, some hiker with time on their hands, and a weird creative streak. I picked it up, turned it over a few times, and put it in my pack. Marcus told me that was a terrible idea. I told him he'd seen too many horror movies. We hiked another 3 miles and made camp in a flat clearing just off the trail beside a creek. Good site, well sheltered, the creek giving us water and white noise. We ate, talked until the fire got low, and turned in. Nothing strange about the evening. Nothing that flagged anything. I was the first one up the next morning. I came out of my tent around 6, still half asleep, and started toward the creek to get water. And I stopped. There was a figure on the ground outside my tent, a bundle of sticks, tied together, arms out, the same general shape as the one sitting in my pack, placed maybe 2 feet from the entrance of my tent, centered, deliberate, not tossed there, set there. I stood over it for a long time before I did anything else. Then I went to my pack and opened it and looked inside. The original one was still there. I brought both of them out and set them side by side on the flat rock by the fire pit and stood back and looked at them. They weren't identical in a mass-produced way. The sticks were different sticks, different lengths, the binding slightly different, but the construction was the same proportions, same arrangement of the limbs, same basic form. To make the second one that close to the first, you would have needed to study the first one carefully. You would have needed to hold it, turn it over, look at how it was put together. It had been inside my pack all night. Marcus and Teo were up within the next 20 minutes. I showed them both figures without saying anything first, just put them on the rock and waited. Marcus stared at them for a while, and then looked at me and said, "Where did that second one come from?" Teo said nothing for a moment, and then said, "One of you is messing with me." We spent probably 20 minutes going back and forth. Both of them swore they hadn't made it. Both of them swore they hadn't touched my pack. I know these guys. I've been in the backcountry with both of them a dozen times over 15 years. I watched their faces when I showed them the two figures side by side, and what I saw wasn't the suppressed amusement of someone who'd pulled something off. It was the same thing I was feeling, which was a low-grade unease that none of us really wanted to name directly. The prank theory requires one of them to have gotten into my pack in the dark without waking me. I'm a light sleeper, always have been, made a figure that closely replicated something they couldn't directly see, and placed it outside my tent without leaving any sign of moving around camp. Possible, technically. But neither of them could have made it that similar without being able to look at the original. And the original was in my pack. The other theory is that someone else was in our camp during the night. We were 4 days into a remote section of Virginia backcountry that sees almost no traffic. We'd seen 0 other hikers since day 1. The nearest trailhead was a long walk from where we'd camped. Whoever made that second figure had to have come into our camp in the dark, worked quietly enough that none of us woke up, constructed something close enough to the one in my pack to be recognizably the same thing, placed it deliberately outside my tent, and left without a trace. And to make it close to the original, they would have had to have seen the original, either before I picked it up on the trail or somehow after. I've turned that over more times than I can count since that trip, and I still can't get comfortable with either version of it. The prank explanation has holes in it I can't fill. The other explanation has implications I like even less. I left both figures on that rock when we broke camp. Didn't want either of them in my pack for the remaining 2 days out. Teo suggested we burn them, and I said, "Let's just leave them and go," and that's what we did. Neither Marcus nor Teo have brought it up since. Not once in the years since that trip. I've tried a couple of times, and both of them kind of redirect the conversation, which tells me they're still sitting with it too and haven't found anywhere comfortable to put it either. The thing I keep coming back to is the placement. Not just the figure itself, but where it was put. 2 feet from my tent entrance. Not near Marcus's tent, not near Teo's. Mine. The tent belonging to the person who picked up the original figure off the trail and put it in his pack. Whatever left that second figure knew which tent was mine, and whatever left it had been close enough to my tent in the dark to place something 2 feet from the door without waking me up. This one didn't scare me when it happened. I was too young to understand what it actually was. It's one of those things that sits completely harmless in your memory for years, and then one day you're an adult and you think about it differently, and the whole thing shifts into something that makes you genuinely cold. I was 6 years old. My parents were part of a group of 3 families that camped together every summer. Same campground, same general area of the Allegheny National Forest in Pennsylvania. Same 2 weeks every July without fail. It was one of those traditions that felt as permanent as anything in childhood feels permanent. The same smells every year, the same sounds, the same feeling of arriving at the campground and knowing exactly where everything was going to be. Between the 3 families, there were 8 kids total that summer, ranging from me at 6 up to maybe 11 or 12 at the oldest. And the way it worked the way it had always worked on these trips, was that the kids ran together as a pack, while the parents handled the adult business of sitting around the fire and talking about whatever adults talked about. We had the woods. They had the campsite. That was the arrangement, and everybody was happy with it. The forest around that campground was dense Pennsylvania woodland, hardwood mostly, the kind that goes dark and cool even in July the moment you get more than 50 feet from the clearing. We weren't allowed to go far. The parents had a boundary, nothing beyond where you could still hear the campsite, and we respected it the way kids that age respect boundaries, which is to say, mostly. What we did have was a walkie-talkie. One of those chunky plastic ones from the 90s with the rubber antenna and the static that crackled when you keyed the button. One of the dads had given it to the oldest kid in our group, a girl named Petra, whose family had the tent pitched nearest the tree line, so that if anything happened, we could call back to the adults. Channel 4, that was the channel. Everyone knew it. We'd been out for maybe an hour that afternoon, just wandering the usual circuit through the trees, turning over logs and following the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the campground property. Normal stuff. The walkie-talkie was clipped to Petra's belt, and none of us had touched it because nothing had happened that required touching it. Then it crackled. We all stopped. Petra unclipped it, and we gathered around the way kids do around anything that makes an unexpected sound. The static settled, and then there was a voice, a man's voice, deep and warm and friendly in that performed way, the way adults do friendly when they're doing friendly on purpose for children. He said he was lost in the woods and needed help finding the kids at the campground. Said he had something for us. Said he'd been walking around looking for us for a while and couldn't find the right path, and could we maybe come find him and show him the way? He told us to head further into the trees, away from the campsite. He said he'd keep talking so we could follow his voice. We were 6, 7, 8 years old, standing in a Pennsylvania forest in the middle of the afternoon, and this seemed completely reasonable to us. A lost man who needed our help. We started moving in the direction he'd suggested, toward the deeper part of the forest, away from the campsite, following the voice coming through the static. We got maybe 100 feet before Petra stopped. She was the oldest, and even at 11, something had registered with her that hadn't registered with the rest of us yet. She didn't say anything specific. She just said, "We're going back," in a tone that none of us argued with, and she turned around and walked back toward the campsite, and the rest of us followed her without fully understanding why. The voice on the walkie-talkie called after us as we walked, still friendly, still patient, asking us to come back, saying he was right there, saying he just needed a little help finding us. Petra turned the walkie-talkie off. We came back into the campsite, and she went straight to her dad and handed it to him, and said there was a man on it who wanted us to go into the woods. I remember the way his face changed when she said it. The very specific way an adult's face changes when something lands wrong. He took the walkie-talkie and tried the channel, but there was nothing on it by then, just static. The parents gathered. There was a conversation between them that the kids weren't included in, but that we watched from across the campsite, trying to read what was happening from the body language. Somebody made a call on a cell phone. The walkie-talkie got put away and didn't come back out for the rest of the trip. And just like that, without any real explanation given to us, the woods were off limits for the remainder of the 2 weeks. We were devastated at the time. We thought the adults were overreacting to something that didn't make sense to us yet. The fun of the trip evaporated and we spent the rest of it confined to the campsite perimeter, and we complained about it the way children complain about things they don't understand. I didn't think about it again for years. And then I was in my mid-20s, and I was talking to my mother about something else entirely, and that summer came up, and I asked her offhandedly what had actually happened with the walkie-talkie that day. What the adults had actually thought. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We think someone had been watching you kids in the woods for a while. Long enough to know you had a walkie-talkie and what channel you were using." She said it calmly, the way you say something you processed a long time ago, and then she changed the subject. I've thought about that a lot since. About how long someone would have to watch a group of children playing in the woods to know which channel the walkie-talkie was set to. About what that means in terms of how close they were. About the fact that they had a story ready, something warm and inviting and calibrated specifically for children. Something designed to make us move voluntarily away from the campsite and deeper into the trees. We were 8 kids. The youngest was 4. The oldest was 11. Petra turned us around. I've never told her what my mother told me. I don't know if she ever found out on her own. Part of me thinks she already knew on some level, even at 11, that whatever registered with her when she stopped and turned us around wasn't just a feeling, but something more specific that she understood without being able to name it yet. So this was late October, maybe 3 years ago now. I was coming back from a solo hike through a section of Monongahela National Forest that most people don't bother with. One of the old, decommissioned Forest Service roads that the trees have mostly taken back over the years. It's not on any of the popular trail maps, just a long corridor of dense West Virginia hardwood that goes in deep and comes back out the same way you entered. And if you know where the path used to be, you can still follow it well enough. I'd done it before, twice, both times in daylight, both times completely uneventful. So, going back at night felt like a reasonable enough idea at the time. I had a headlamp. I knew the general route. The weather was clear when I started. That was the full extent of my planning, and honestly, I thought it was enough. The hike in was fine. It's the return that got strange. I started back toward the trailhead around 10 at night. The canopy in late October is mostly gone, so you get whatever light the sky is willing to give you. And that night, the sky wasn't giving much. Heavy cloud cover, no moon worth mentioning. Just that deep, rural West Virginia dark that has a physical weight to it when you're standing in the middle of it, 6 miles from the nearest road. My headlamp was doing everything. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to see my own hands. About 40 minutes into the return, I got the feeling. If you've hiked alone at night, you know the one. It's not a sound, and it's not something you see. It's just your body deciding, before you've consciously registered anything, that something behind you is paying attention to you. The hairs on your arms, the back of your neck, something in your stomach. I stopped on the trail and looked back. Nothing there. Just the path disappearing into darkness and the trees on both sides standing close. I shook it off and kept going. It came back maybe 20 minutes later, stronger this time. I stopped again, looked back again, saw the same empty trail. At this point, I'm genuinely trying to talk myself down. It's an old forest. It's dark. Your brain manufactures things in the dark. This is just what happens when you're alone out here at night. I believed that enough to keep walking. The third time it hit me, I stopped talking myself into anything. I turned around and put the full beam behind me. There was something at the edge of the light. Back down the trail, far enough that the beam was starting to lose its reach. low to the ground. And the second the light found it, it was gone, off the trail and into the brush on the left side in one movement. Fast, smooth, absolutely silent. Not the way a deer moves, not the way anything I've ever startled in those woods moves. It went sideways and low, like something that knew exactly where the cover was and had already decided to use it before I even turned around. I stood there with my light on the spot where it disappeared, and there was nothing. Branches, darkness, the sound of the forest. I called my brother. He picked up after a couple of rings, and I could hear he was half asleep already, and I didn't care. I just started talking. Told him the name of the Forest Service road, told him roughly where I was on the trail and how far I had left to go. Told him if he didn't hear from me within the next hour or so, he should call someone, and here's exactly where to send them. He woke up fast after that, asked me what was going on, and I said I wasn't completely sure, but I wanted someone to know where I was, just in case. He offered to get in the truck and drive out. I told him no, just stay on the line. So that's what we did. I walked and talked and kept the beam moving, ahead, behind, left, right, every 30 seconds or so, and my brother stayed on the phone with me and kept the conversation going. We talked about nothing. His kids, a game that had been on earlier, whatever, just voices in the dark. And twice more, over the next mile and a half, I saw the eyes. Just the eyes. 2 points of light caught in the beam, low and wide, off the trail to my left in the trees. Not moving when I caught them, just there, patient and still, and looking directly at me. The second time, I held the beam right on them, and they didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't scatter, didn't do anything that any animal I've ever come across in those woods does when a light hits them directly. They just sat there in the darkness, steady, until I moved the beam away, and when I swung it back, they were gone. I kept talking to my brother, told him about the eyes. He went quiet for a second, and then just said, "Keep walking, don't stop." So I kept walking. The light started giving out somewhere around the 4th mile. That stuttering, warning kind of flicker that tells you it's made its last decision, and you've got maybe minutes left. I slowed down, stopped sweeping the beam, tried to get as much out of what was left as I could. It held on longer than I expected, and then just quit. About a mile from the county road. Just done. The last mile I walked in complete darkness. No moon, no stars getting through. Just the shapes of the trees against a slightly lighter strip of sky above the trail and my own feet finding the ground. I could hear the forest the whole way. Wind, branches, the normal sounds of a West Virginia woodland at night that I have never in my life listened to as carefully as I did in that last mile. I came out onto the county road and walked to where my truck was sitting at the pull-off and got in and just sat there for a minute before I called my brother back. He picked up before it finished the first ring. I told him I was out. He exhaled loud enough that I could hear it clearly. He asked me what was following me out there. I told him I genuinely didn't know. Something that moved low and fast and quiet and knew that forest better than I did. Something that was content to stay just far enough behind me to stay out of what my light could clearly resolve. Something that watched me from the tree line twice without reacting to the beam at all. I've been back to Monongahela since. Different sections, always with someone else, always with batteries I checked the night before. Not that road, though. What I keep coming back to is those eyes in the beam, the stillness of them, the patience. No urgency, no alarm, nothing reactive, just watching me walk, like it already knew how the night was going to go, and had no problem with that at all. I work as a wildlife biologist for the state. Most of what the job actually looks like day to day is not what people picture when you tell them that. It's a lot of driving county roads, a lot of walking through unremarkable stretches of forest with a clipboard, a lot of recording data that will eventually become part of a report that most people will never read. The field work is real, but it's mostly routine. You spend enough time moving through remote woodland alone, and it stops feeling remote. It just feels like work. I was out doing a habitat assessment in a section of the Ozark National Forest in Arkansas. This particular area was on the edge of my survey territory. Dense mixed woodland, mostly second growth, the kind of terrain that doesn't get much foot traffic because there's nothing there that draws people in. No trails marked on any recreational map, no hunting blinds that I'd seen, no sign of regular human passage. Just trees and undergrowth and the particular silence that settles into places that have been left alone long enough. I'd parked on a forest road and walked in maybe half a mile following a drainage line that the survey required me to check. The work was straightforward. I was moving slowly, stopping to record what I needed to record, not thinking about much beyond the task in front of me. The drainage bent left, and I followed it and came through a dense section of undergrowth and stepped out into a clearing. My first thought was that I'd misread my map somehow and wandered onto private property. That's the first thing you think when you find something man-made in the middle of nowhere that has no business being there. You assume human error, yours, before you assume anything else. There was a swing set, old metal, the tubular kind from several decades back, the frame leaning slightly to one side where one of the legs had sunk into the soft ground over the years. The chains were still attached, hanging straight down, the rubber seats cracked and split from years of weather. Rust had worked its way through most of the metal, the orange-brown of long abandonment covering everything. Beside it, taking up the center of the clearing, was a merry-go-round. One of those large flat disc ones with the metal handrails radiating out from the center hub, the kind that used to be in every schoolyard before liability concerns made them disappear. This one was enormous, the kind you don't see anymore, easily 12 feet across. Same rust as the swing set, the same look of something that had been sitting in this clearing for a very long time. I stood at the edge of the clearing and looked at it for a while, trying to figure out what I was looking at and what it was doing here. An old school, maybe, long since demolished or burned down with only the playground equipment left. A rural homestead that had children. Something that made sense once and stopped making sense when whatever it belonged to disappeared. The trees around the clearing were old enough that they'd have been here when whatever this was still in use. The forest had been growing back in around the edges of the clearing for decades. The undergrowth advancing slowly from all sides, the clearing itself smaller now than it would have originally been. I took a few steps in, and then I stopped. The merry-go-round was spinning. Not fast at first. I might have missed it if I'd been moving. But I wasn't moving. I was standing still, and it was definitely rotating. Slowly at first, and then faster. The hub making a low grinding sound as it picked up speed, the rusted metal complaining against itself. The whole disc turning with a momentum that kept building until it was going at a speed that no residual motion from wind or settling could account for. There was no wind in that clearing. The trees around the edges were completely still. The swing set chains were hanging straight and motionless. Whatever was making that merry-go-round spin was not the wind. I called out, "Hello, is somebody there?" The standard things you say when you're trying to be reasonable about something that isn't cooperating with reasonable. The clearing gave me nothing back. No answer, no movement at the tree line, no sound from anywhere except the grinding rotation of the merry-go-round, which was still going. I stood there probably 30 seconds, watching it spin in a windless clearing in the middle of a section of forest that wasn't supposed to have anything in it. Then I turned around and walked back the way I came. I want to be straight about how I felt doing that. I'm not someone who rattles easily. The job puts you in remote places alone on a regular basis, and you either make peace with that or you find different work. I've been in the field in weather that was genuinely dangerous. I've had close encounters with animals that could have gone badly. I've navigated in the dark in terrain that didn't forgive mistakes. None of that has ever made me turn around and leave a site without completing what I came to do. I left that clearing without completing the survey. I just left. When I got back to the office, I pulled every historical map we had for that section of the county. Timber survey maps, old agricultural plats, anything that might show what had been in that area before the National Forest absorbed it. I asked one of our regional archaeologists to run a search through the historical property records and see if anything came up for that location. Nothing. No school, no church, no homestead, no record of any structure or settlement in that area, going back as far as the records went. Whatever that clearing was, it didn't appear in any document any of us could find. The archaeologist asked me to take him out there to look at it himself. I told him I'd think about it. That was 2 years ago. I haven't gone back and I haven't taken him out there. Every time I think about it seriously, I get to the part where I'm walking back into that clearing and I just stop. Here's the thing that I keep turning over and can't put down. The merry-go-round wasn't just spinning, it was accelerating. It went from a slow rotation to a fast one while I was standing there watching it. Something was actively putting energy into it while I was in that clearing. I never saw what. The tree line around that clearing was dense enough that someone could have been standing inside it, and I wouldn't have been able to see them clearly. And if someone was standing inside that tree line, they would have been able to see me clearly from the moment I stepped out of the undergrowth. They would have known I was there before I knew they were. That's the part that stays with me. Not the spinning, the sequence of it. The clearing that had no record of existing. The equipment that had been sitting there long enough to rust through completely. And whatever was in that tree line that started spinning a merry-go-round the moment I walked in and watched me stand there and didn't answer when I called out and kept spinning it while I decided what to do. Patient, quiet, waiting to see what I was going to choose. I chose to leave. I think that was the right call. I'm pretty sure I was supposed to choose something else.